Oh, great. We have someone from Saskatchewan on the call today. So I think that's signal that it's time to get started. I'm excited. We're officially an international webinar. So I'll take a moment to welcome everyone here to this expert online training webinar. My name is Kurtz McKinnon. I am an EOT faculty member and a camp director, consultant, and trainer out of Ann Arbor, Michigan. And I'm here with Caren Baruch-Feldman. And Caren knows herself better than I know her. So I think, Caren, would you just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yes, so I'm a psychologist. I'm also a mom of 2 kids, and I've worked in camps, either directly. I was actually the camp psychologist at Ramon Nyack for many years, and I've also done lots of training, and I currently work in a school part-time, have a practice, and I wrote my first book called The Grit Guide for Teens. So I'm kind of busy, and wow. I love giving these workshops. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Awesome. So your book is The Grit Guide for Teens, you said, right?
Yes, it's called, it has a longer subtitle, but The Grit Guide for Teens.
Okay.
And
cool.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that is really interesting kind of coming into today's conversation, because a lot of our staff are teens or very recently were teens. So I'm hopeful that a lot of lessons from your research for your book will apply to today's conversation. Great. And if you are just getting on the call, you'll notice that there's a chat window that we'll be monitoring throughout the course of the call. So if you have a question for us or a comment or anything like that, we'll try to monitor the chat. So feel free to use that throughout the day. So for expert online training, we do online training modules for youth program or summer program staff. And Caren, you've done a module or 2 actually around this topic.
Yes, and one of the things I forgot, and I should have said, that I'm a proud faculty member of EOT too. So yes, let me add that to my bio. So I have done a few modules. Both of the modules I did, actually one has a part 1 and part 2, but they actually incorporate Jewish thinking as well as my dog Brandy in one of them about developing positive relationships for campers and staff. And then the second one, which is pretty related to this, and this was actually prior to me writing the book, is about staying motivated and having stamina all summer long, also incorporating Jewish principles plus psychological principles as well. And so I have created those modules for EOT in the past.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's great. And I was a camp director of a big YMCA camp for many years, and for us, we're running an overnight summer camp program, and summer is really hard. It's really long, and it's a lot of pressure. You're not just, I always say you're not just scooping ice cream. Like, this is actually like a life or death job in some circumstances. And for many of our staff, it's their first job ever. And it's hot, and there's bugs, and there's pee, and all these other things that can make your day a really long day. And there's all these things that can make your day a really, really great day. At the end, we always like to say the days are long, but the summer is short, right?
Yes, it's very true.
Yeah, and so that's why I'm excited to speak with you, because when I talk with other camp directors all the time, people are asking, how do I keep my staff motivated? How do I prevent burnout? How do I stop people from quitting? And so I think this topic is a great one to play with as we're exploring how do we even start now to help our staff have that grit. So Caren, grit is such a trendy word right now. Like, I feel like it's in the news. It's in the Harvard Business Review. It's,
it's even in a Geico ad.
It's in a Geico ad. And that's when like, this is not going away, right?
Yes.
But what is it?
So the way I define grit is based on Dr. Angela Duckworth's definition. She has put grit on the map. I mean, grit has been around before Dr. Duckworth, but what she describes grit is having passion and perseverance for long-term goals. And what that really means is being connected and being able to persist and be resilient in the face of long-term challenges. And I think you can think, just like you said before, that this quality is going to be so important for youth and for adults, especially I think for young staff members. And what she found with this quality of grit and why it's so trendy and popular is that it is really associated with people's success. So we can foster this quality of grit in our young people, in our teens, and ourselves. We're helping people to be truly successful. So that is how I define grit.
Hello?
Sarah, I hear you.
Oh my gosh.
What happened to you?
I'm so sorry. I really don't know.
Well, you have to have grit. That's what this is all about. You demonstrated grit. You didn't quit. You came back.
Yeah, and I panicked, but I didn't let it show on the outside. So thank you for waiting. I assume I just missed your awesome definition of grit, and I'm here just in time to ask my follow-up question.
Yes, but actually, Sarah, I know you didn't plan that, but that really is what grit is all about, is having that passion, having that perseverance, and not quitting, and figuring out how to stick to that goal, which was for us to have this talk today. So anyway, well, we're back.
You said I had grit, but I think, like, from your side of things, it's like the old adage is the show must go on, right? Is that kind of like what grit is in a certain way? Like, the show must go on. If you're, planning a kids event or a webinar, like, people are counting on you. So how do you make it not about you and make the show go on?
Right. It's right. Yeah. And one of the things we do know from the research is that people who are really gritty have this sense of purpose. And what I mean by purpose is that they connect, they want to do something, they have these goals that are important to them, but they don't only have it for themselves, they have it for other people. So if you look at like Simone Manuel or Katie Ledecky or these really amazing people, they often are gritty, not because the goal serves only themselves, but for others. And I think, again, for our staff, one of the things that if we could help them with is to connect to that sense of purpose. How is this not only going to be benefiting you, but also benefiting your campers, your community, and the world in general? And I think that one thing is unique about teens, that's awesome about teens, is that they really get into this whole sense of purpose and thinking about communities and being activists. And I think we can provide them that opportunity through camps to really do amazing things.
Yeah, we've heard also research that when young millennials or this new generation, Generation Z or whatever we're calling it, coming in is looking for what they want in a job, they most want to make a difference or make an impact, and we have that advantage. So Anna has a question that I do want to get to in a moment, but before we get there, let's think about the points of contact that we have with our staff, right? So we have this hiring process, and then we have staff training before the kids even get there, if we're talking about just a regular camp or summer program setting. So Caren, in your experience, what are some things that we can do as camp leaders in the lead up to the actual, program period that we can either cultivate or identify or help grow grit in our staff?
So I guess, like, in terms of hiring, I think, again, let's think about that definition. We want to have counselors who are passionate, and we want them also to be persistent and resilient. We want those qualities. And one of the things I remember thinking about when I was the camp psychologist at Ramah is that those counselors who have that energy, that zest, that passion, the ones that get really into the job were the ones that, like, almost had that secret sauce. And I think that is something we should be also really looking for hiring. I think also in terms of that idea of hiring staff members who can talk about a time when they were resilient and that they bounced back. And I think, people who have had experiences that maybe been challenges and seeing those challenges as opportunities. I think we don't want to just have staff who've never, bruised their knee, but instead we want to have staff who maybe had some kind of challenges in their life and they now are able to grow and see those as opportunities. So I think in the hiring process, you want to maybe see that. But I also think it's teachable. And I think that in our early staff training and also even small moments throughout the summer, we can be teaching staff about what the research says is associated with growing grit.
And when you say teaching staff about what the research says, what do you mean by that? Like in context of potentially their work with children or their own self-growth, or do you weave those things together in that type of lesson? Because I can see it being beneficial to both your staff and the kids that they're connecting with throughout the summer.
Right. So I think it's important to separate, but also to talk about both. I think that in terms of, let's say, having a gritty mindset, behavior, and team, that's sort of the way I would conceptualize it. But for the staff member themselves, for them to have a mindset that is optimistic and has what we call a growth mindset. And what I mean, for those of you who don't know so much about growth mindset, it's the idea of understanding that actually in the experience, in doing things, we grow. And so if a staff member is struggling, let's say they're struggling with a camper or struggling with an activity, to give them that message that actually that's where the magic happens. When you're struggling, that's when you're going to actually grow. So for them, their own selves, and also to reflect on campers, that when campers are struggling or when they're having a hard time, that's when the magic can grow for them. I remember sometimes some of the most amazing experiences in summers have been with staff members who maybe had some challenging campers. And when they were able to get those campers to make movement, those were such rewarding experiences. So I think, having that conversation about themselves and then how it would play out with their campers is really important in terms of mindset. In terms of behavior, what we know from the research, we want counselors to practice and to make things into habits. One thing that we know is that it's very hard to have willpower. Just saying no and is a very hard thing to do. But when we make good habits for ourselves and for our campers, we are going to be more successful. And ultimately, setting goals. Camp can also be a tremendous time when kids can make goals about swimming or about the ropes course or about whatever their things are going on. And when kids set and accomplish goals, they can also be a lot grittier. And the last part I would say that I would really emphasize is the whole team approach to grit. When my research, when I was interviewing teens about what really helped them when they struggled or when they had to pull through, it was support. So it was either a teacher, a parent, a friend. And again, counselors can be this tremendous support to campers, but even more importantly, counselors don't work in isolation. They always work as part of a team. So whatever team they are, they should rely on those. And I even remember this before I talked about grit when I worked at Ramah, I always told counselors how important it is when they're struggling that they always have someone around there that they can kind of pass that baton to and they can kind of lean on, either for support or for accountability.
Yeah, the thing that is so interesting about this, Caren, is like showing the counselors or the staff the impact that they have in the kids helps build grit in the counselors because they're seeing the long game, right? And all the little things or the tedious things or all the actions that they're doing. And then in turn, that helps the kids build grit or perseverance in their lives, right?
Exactly. And again, back to like what the science says, one of the most powerful ways that you can teach or actually gain a skill is by teaching it. Just like, we have that medical model. You see one, you do one, you teach one. What I'm finding, and the research supports, is that by counselors actually teaching or helping their campers grow their grit, they actually grow their own grit. And sometimes that's a better way of also getting a message across in this indirect type of way than kind of like berating and nudging and like constantly having meetings with your staff members. Yeah. If you can teach your counselors how to maybe help their campers almost be gritty, that message will start like reverberating in them as well.
Yeah, and another thing I want to add, I've been involved with the Center for Positive Organizations here at the University of Michigan, and something important, I think positivity kind of goes along with this grit topic. It's something I've also learned is positivity doesn't mean that you're happy all the time.
Right.
Or you have unrealistic ideas about the world. And so reconciling that, I think, is important. And it's a great conversation to have with staff. Like, think about a fireside chat around this topic during staff training. Let's dive in, let's talk, and let's share the research. As you're saying, a lot of our staff have all the information in the world at their fingertips and have had it as such for all of their lives. So just us saying something because, like, we're the friendly neighborhood camp director, whatever we are, and we believe in it, doesn't necessarily mean that the counselors are going to eat it up. They want to know why.
Right.
And showing them that scientific data is super powerful, I think, especially what I'm hearing about, like, our new generation of staff coming in. They're always saying, well, why do we have that rule? Or why are we doing it this way? Or why is that important? So having that information is very, very cool. So I want to take a quick minute because we actually have a really great raffle, which is a gift certificate from Everything Summer Camp, the amazing camp outfitter. And I just got a digital message that Chris drew the names of 2 of our participants who are going to get that gift certificate that will be emailed to them. So congrats to Morgan Thiesey and Mark Davis. Cool.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Cool. Yeah, Everything Summer Camp has all sorts of amazing gear, everything you or your campers or staff might need. So we encourage you to check them out. And if you got a gift certificate as a raffle winner, definitely check them out. We'll send you that information. Okay, so we're thinking about the interview process, the hiring process. Then we're thinking about staff training and incorporating information about how we want to grow grit or perseverance in kids and how the data helps us understand the importance of this. But we're always training our staff, right? We have that time maybe before summer starts, but we also have the entire length of our season. So that kind of relates to Anna's question when she says, how do positive reinforcement methods versus tough love work in developing grit for staff members? So when we're coaching, do we want to be super positive, or do we need to tell it like it is? We don't want to sugarcoat things because that's not really growing grit. If we're lying, like, what's your take on that, Caren?
Right. So I think that we do want to catch our counselors doing the right thing, and kind of, I think that does positive reinforcement is helpful. So if we see a counselor who is passionate, I think, again, as like leaders in camp, it's very easy when things are going well to kind of take a back seat and not acknowledge that positive behavior. But on that hot summer day, when you see your staff, they're working hard and they're like running activities and they're full of enthusiasm, I think it's really, really essential to acknowledge that and let them know that you really like specifically what they're doing. And I also think that puts what I said, and it actually goes back to one of my modules for EOT, it puts money in our relationship bank account. If you're constantly, giving them feedback, at a certain point, sometimes the staff is done with the feedback. But if you have that relationship, one that's flush with all this positive reinforcement, I think when you do need to give that feedback, that they will be more realistic. And I think feedback is a really an important point. And I think that one of the things that we can also be explicit about is feedback. And to say feedback is that I'm giving you this feedback because, again, this is based on science and research that's being done, because I both have high expectations and I'm going to help you get there. And I think that that's really crucial when we give our staff feedback, is that you let them know, because we have a growth mindset, not a fixed mindset about them, that they can grow and that they can meet that, and that we're going to scaffold and help them get there. Because I am a big believer, and I really do, that everyone wants to be successful. And if people aren't being successful, I think we have to help them figure out why that's not happening and help them to get there.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I've had conversations with several camp directors this fall, actually, who said, I had such a hard time with feedback with my staff last year. I've been doing this for decades. And last year was the first year that my staff would crumble when I gave them feedback. Like, it was really devastating for them to get feedback. And so I really love the approach of saying, I'm telling you this because I have high expectations and you have so much potential, and I want to figure out with you, how to support you or help you get there, is a lot different in an approach to a counselor. But do you see that kind of fragility around feedback among staff? Or as David kind of said, is it important to make sure staff understand you have high expectations, or will this discourage them? I mean, is it too much pressure that we have high expectations? And what is with this kind of fragility that's happening at the same time?
I think that there is fragility. I think there's anxiety. I think that, again, our staff members often, sometimes, again, it varies, but sometimes this is their first job. I remember always, for a long time, I worked at Camp Ramah, and I had little kids, and then my little kids grew, and now I have a son who's in college and a daughter in 10th grade, and I had children the age of counselors, and it gave me a different perspective of who these people are, how and what their experience is as being staff members. And so I think that, often it is people's first job, and I think people are anxious. And I think that if we can be explicit about this notion of feedback, just like we teach other things, I think that this might be valuable in an initial staff training to discuss what feedback looks like, why we're giving this, the notion of having a growth mindset with feedback, and that it's because, again, that we have high expectations, but we can help you get there, and we think you can, and that you're not fixed, that we hired you because we think you have the skill set, but no one expects people to come in mastering everything, and that we're all works in progress. And I think also as leaders in camp, it's also helpful sometimes to explain to our staff times when we struggled and when we had challenges and how we overcame, so that so that the staff members feel more comfortable coming to us. I remember also working in camp that often my problems most were when staff members did not come to me when there's a problem and waited off until the end of the summer to tell me, I think this camper can't come back, and I had a big problem on my hand, right? So I think that we really want our staff members and our counselors to feel comfortable coming to us, to be open to feedback, to be open to growth, because that's how people are gritty. And I think that also, sometimes things I talk about when I give a lot of workshop is this iceberg illusion. So I think that today, even more so with social media and the way things are, there's this illusion of success that we just see the top. We don't see all the hard work. And so I think that our counselors, they often just think like there's just this way, this magical counselor just comes out of a box, and not all the hard work and all the thing that goes into that. And I think we have to kind of break that iceberg illusion and show everyone that underneath everyone's success is hard work, dedication, and a real commitment to that work.
Well, and I really like what you said about sharing, being vulnerable yourself and sharing, I've made these mistakes, or this happened to me when I was a first-year counselor. And I love building on that and saying, I'm the camp director now, and I've been at camp for X number of years, and here's some things I'm working on. Or, right, more, counselor, about this. Can you help me with this? Or I'm working on this. I'd like to get feedback from the staff on it. Here's a survey, an anonymous paper survey I want to pass out at the staff meeting to provide the admin team with feedback. So like modeling that feedback is a two-way street, and like you have a growth mindset for yourself maybe makes the feedback that you're giving out less scary to people. So, but it is, it is this tough thing because we want people to have grit and perseverance and be open to feedback. And we're saying things like I did at the beginning of the webinar, like this is a life or death situation, like this is an intense job, like it means so much, you change kids' lives, and like that orientation is so much pressure on people when you think about it. Like, we also need to be realistic with our staff about like, if you make a mistake, it's probably not an end of the world, type of mistake, but maybe it is. I
guess so, right? Yes, but I think that right. We do want them to understand, and maybe also help them understand which are, these more life and death kinds of mistakes. But on the other hand, I do think that we want kids to learn. I think staff should know that fail means our first attempt in learning, and that when we're not there, we're just not there yet. And I think those messages are really important. I think our staff, I think some people you have to light a fire in, and some people you have to give them a hose, and you probably know that about the counselors that you're working with, and you have to sort of have your approach meet each people's specific personalities and needs. But I think in general, if we have the idea that even when things are challenging, there is beauty and opportunity in that, and that's where the magic is, that's where the growth is, I think it takes some of the scariness out of these things, and I think that can be a wonderful thing for both, a lesson that we can get from camps for our staff and for our campers.
Great. Well, we only have a couple more minutes left in our Express webinar here. Is there anything that I didn't ask you about that you want to share? Any other tips that you have when we're working, especially with college age staff or teen staff, in helping them either grow grit themselves or working alongside of them to help them, in that process?
I think one thing, again, when we're working, one of the experiences I have with working with teens, and it's a little different than working with younger kids, is you've got to be a little bit stealthy and nudgy, and that and you can't just be, your message cannot be as direct. And I think we have to be a little bit creative about how we're going to be sharing this message. And I think these small little, like we call them in the research, wise interventions, these small interventions which help teens nudge them in certain behaviors. And one of the most powerful ways is, as I said to you before, is getting teens to sort of teach somebody else. Or the other thing that camps have that are really unique are these physical opportunities, like the ropes course and swimming. And I think that those things can be really powerful and real lessons that we can all remember about times when something was hard and we really worked hard and we overcame. And one of the things I did when I did staff training was I did ask counselors to kind of reflect. Often they were campers themselves, and to think back about a time that was the most memorable for them when they were in camp themselves. And often, most of the times, it wasn't about the stuff in the lake or the food or those fancy trips, but it were about sometimes things that they overcame and these powerful moments. And so if we can get our staff to reflect on that and remember how important that was for them, I think that they'll be willing and more able to give that to their campers. Yeah. So I think that that's like kind of the framework I'd like to share with you.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Okay. I have so many ideas I just want to take to a camp staff right away. Well, thank you to you, Caren, for all your insights, and obviously to Expert Online Training for sponsoring this webinar and producing the videos where your staff can hear all the great stuff that people like Caren have to say. Definitely check out eotexpertonlinetraining.com. And also another thank you to everythingsummercamp.com for the $50 gift certificates for both Morgan and Mark. So we just love prizes around here. Yes. So I think that's a win. And Caren, if people have questions for you or want to reach you, what's the best way to get in contact or follow up?
So I have a website. It's drbaruchfeldman.com. The other thing I'm really proud about is, as part of the Grit Guide for Teens, everything was teen inspired, and I have teens on a YouTube channel called the Grit Guide for Teens who share their grit story. So the other thing to do is, if you are interested in seeing these videos or using them as inspiration for your staff, everything there is free, and people can use that. Because again, the way I felt this message was going to be better able to get across was to have teens share their stories with other teens. And these videos are really inspiring of a whole host of teens who are really gritty. So they can check out my website, drbaruchfeldman.com, or the YouTube channel, The Grit Guide for Teens. And as I said, and a lot of the stuff I'm talking to you comes from my book called The Grit Guide for Teens. And basically the idea for the book was to take really the best research and make it in a way that's going to be accessible for teens. So they basically can write through it and decide about an area they want to grow their grit. Because as I said to you before, I'm a big believer that A, it can be taught, and B, that this is a really important thing for our young people today.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's something we weren't really talking about a couple years ago. So if we can use it to make not just camp better, but the people's lives that we touch better, let's do it. So
yeah.
And this will be recorded as well. So if you want to share it with anyone else or revisit the webinar, we'll put it on EOT social media and that sort of thing. So, all right.
And one last thought, just to those camp people out there, and I think that we should be advertising in camp that, again, since this is so trendy and so popular, that camps are really a unique opportunity to really build these skills. And I think that that's really important, because I think that parents are kind of interested in their teens being gritty, and we can kind of provide them that opportunity through our programs.
Yeah. Great, a marketing tip.
Yes, a marketing tip.
I love it. Yeah, you didn't even know you were going to get one, but it's so true. Who else does it like camps do? So That's really real. All right, my friends, we'll have a great afternoon, and we'll see you back at another EOT webinar in a couple of weeks. So watch for some announcements. Thank you, Caren.
Bye.